Can you imagine what Tolkien himself would say if he found out that his one book was being adapted into a trilogy? Because I can't.
Far over the misty mountains rise, leave us standing upon the high.
The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, directed by Peter Jackson, and is of course the first part of the three-part adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, which is the prequel to The Lord of the Rings, which tells the story of Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit who's enjoying the comforts of his home but is whisked away by Gandalf and a foreign Oakenshielder company of 13 dwarves to reclaim their homeland from the dragon Smaug. Now, I did already review the Lord of the Rings trilogy last year. They were some of my early reviews, so if you have not seen them yet, please make sure to check them out, because after I reviewed the Hobbit trilogy, I will be ranking all 6 Middle-earth movies. I thought, with The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey being 5 years old now, and the Book of the Hobbit, I have it here, being 80 years old this year, my goodness, I decided what better time to review the Hobbit trilogy. Now, we all know the Hobbit had some phenomenal production issues when they were being made. I mean, Peter Jackson never originally intended to make the Hobbit, but fans were begging them for years, please do the Hobbit. So Peter Jackson finally gave in to the peer pressure and decided the Hobbit would be made. But originally he was not going to direct it. Hard to believe. I know Guillermo del Toro was going to direct it, but he, at the last minute, said goodbye to The Hobbit in 2010, so Peter Jackson stepped in, and now he's directing it, and it was originally going to be 2 movies, of course, An Unexpected Journey and There and Back Again, which would have been a perfect adaptation, but for some reason, the studio in 2012 completely changed their mind and decided, we've got to make this 3 movies, because money, even though Peter Jackson was rightfully against this, even he didn't know how he was going to do it in 3 films, but he had to give in because he needed the studio to make the movie. So how did The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey turn out? Well, it was a box office hit. It's the 4th highest grossing movie of 2012. It did make over $1 billion, but sadly it got mixed critical reception at best, and it only has a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes. But I have to say, I understand why the majority of Tolkien fans just hate this trilogy. They consider it the Star Wars prequels of Middle-earth. But I have to say, guys, I enjoy the Hobbit trilogy for the most part. I know you Tolkien fans are getting ready to click that dislike button, but just hear me out. I mean, I'm not denying that the Hobbit films are not perfect. I am not denying that they are inferior to the Lord of the Rings movies, because they are. They are not even close to the majesty of the Lord of the Rings films, but I enjoy them for what they are, and An Unexpected Journey, I think, is the best of the Hobbit trilogy, as it feels most like a Hobbit film. Yes, I am a proud defender of this movie, and I think that Rotten Tomatoes rating is a little harsh and a little unfair. I am so glad, personally, that Peter Jackson is the director of these Hobbit movies. I mean, I can't imagine Guillermo del Toro doing them. It would have been interesting to see his version of The Hobbit, but let's face it, Peter Jackson's the only director to make Middle-earth movies. He's the same director of Lord of the Rings, so and if there's one thing that An Unexpected Journey gets very right, it takes you back into Middle-earth brilliantly. Peter Jackson brilliantly constructed Hobbiton. He brilliantly constructed Rivendell. Just took us to even new locations in Middle-earth that we didn't get to see in the Lord of the Rings films. He brought us back in the best way. This movie has... People complain about the overuse of CGI, but I think this movie has a perfect blend of practical and CGI effects, all blended beautifully together, that still makes Middle-earth feel like the living, breathing world that the Lord of the Rings movies felt. Even if this is a smaller version of Middle-earth and doesn't have the epic scope of the Lord of the Rings films, it doesn't need to. It's not trying to. And the next best thing I can say about this movie is the cast. The cast are all brilliant, especially Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins. That is, I think, one of the 5 best casting decisions of all time. He gave one of the most legitimate, best performances in any Middle-earth movie as Bilbo Baggins. I'm not kidding, and Bilbo actually is a more interesting character than Frodo ever was. And I love Bilbo's growth throughout the story of the Hobbit. He starts out as a nice, simple Hobbit who just wants a quiet life, which we can all relate to, but he realises through the persuasion of Gandalf and the dwarves that if he just stays home all his life won't be that eventful. He needs some adventure, and that's a great message for us all that Tolkien wrote, so to take risks. And Ian McKellen fantastically returned as Gandalf. Great to have you back, buddy. He has never given a bad performance as Gandalf, and he gives some of the most heartfelt moments of the movie. But the most underrated performance of the movie and the Hobbit trilogy is Richard Armitage's Thorin Oakenshield. Richard Armitage deserves way more attention and recognition for this role. He embodies Thorin perfectly. Thorin has the best backstory of all the dwarfs in the movie, being the heir to the throne of Erebor, but due to his kingdom being taken and the loss of his grandfather and father, you really feel for the guy, and he's basically the Aragorn of this trilogy. He has to retake back his kingdom, kind of like Aragorn had to return to the throne of Gondor, and Richard Armitage deserved an Oscar. It's such a shame he didn't get the recognition. And the other dwarves in the movie, they're great fun. Granted, they are not as well developed as Thorin. They are just there for comic relief, and you don't care about them nearly as much as the Fellowship from the original movies. But they're still great fun, and they are brilliantly designed, as well as the characters from the book. We get some new characters as well that were from the appendices of The Lord of the Rings, but never made an appearance in the actual book, like Radagast the Brown, played by Sylvester McCoy. If you're a Doctor Who fan like Peter Jackson, you will know he played the 7th Doctor, and Sylvester McCoy does a great performance. I'm not sure if the character of Radagast was really that necessary in the end, but he serves somewhat of a purpose here, and I don't mind them adding new characters into the story and making slight changes from the book. If this was just a complete remake of the book, that would be boring. There wouldn't be any surprises, and I loved seeing Cate Blanchett, Hugo Weaving, Christopher Lee return as Galadriel, Elrond and Saruman. I get that the first hour of the film is the slowest part, but that's the same with every Peter Jackson movie. The first hour of his movies are always the part where you develop the characters, to which the first hour of this movie does that flawlessly. Like the opening, the backstory where we see Smaug actually take Erebor is awesome. I'm glad they actually showed that happen instead of just telling it. And I know the party at Bag End goes on for the length of an actual dinner party, but I think that's justified. It gives us time to know the dwarves and develop Bilbo, Gandalf and Thorin, our 3 leads. Whether we got to know all of the dwarves in the end is another story, but for now that was flawless character development, and I love the fact that this movie is the most faithful to the book of the 3 adaptations, yet it gives us some surprises, things we didn't expect, like that awesome flashback where the dwarves are trying to take Moria from the orcs, and introducing the character of Azog, who is the main villain of this movie, who serves as the antagonist while Smaug is absent and sleeping in the Golden Erebor. Azog has a cool-ass design and does provide a formidable threat whenever he is in this movie, but that's the problem. Azog really doesn't do a lot in this movie at all. He is only in 3 scenes, literally, and that's it. Not to mention, he is CGI. Why did they CGI the orcs in the Hobbit movies? makeup and the prosthetic orcs in the Lord of the Rings films looked outstanding. They looked terrifying. Why couldn't they have brought that back here? Oh well, yeah, this movie definitely has more CGI and is more obvious than the Lord of the Rings movies, but I will say of the three, this movie does have the best CGI. It's still incorporated with the practical effects and sets as well as it can, as the sets are just absolutely awe-inspiring and wonderful to behold. There's the amount of detail and heart and magic that went into this movie is unbelievable. The filmmakers worked their butts off to bring Middle-earth back to the big screen, and that clearly shows. And people have complained that this movie lacks tension and doesn't feel like the characters are in any danger in comparison to the Lord of the Rings movies. And to be fair, they're kind of right. There is a lack of tension in this film, but I would argue that the Hobbit book isn't as dark as Lord of the Rings, so it's understandable that this movie is going to be lighter in tone than Lord of the Rings, and at least the action scenes, while they do lack tension, at least they're fun, and that's what the Hobbit book was meant to be. It's a fun adventure, and I love the action scenes that we do get with the trolls and the warg chase. The stone giant battle was astonishing, and the Goblin King brought to life brilliantly by Barry Humphrey doing motion capture. Yeah, that action scene in the Goblin Tunnels was just awesome. I will talk about the White Council and Dol Guldur Necromancer subplot more in my Desolation of Smaug review, because it's really not that much in this movie whatsoever. And although I love Howard Shore's soundtrack is wonderful. I love that classic theme. Whenever you hear that theme, you know it's The Hobbit. Dun 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 dun. Oh, I'm glad this soundtrack felt like it was a part of the Middle-earth films while giving itself its own identity. But the film's best scene is without question the Gollum scene. Andy Serkis just wonderfully returns to the role and gives, as usual, one of his best motion capture performances as Gollum to date. In fact, this is probably the best Gollum scene in the entire Middle-earth saga. It is that pitch perfect. I could watch that scene 100 times and never get tired of it. In fact, the third act of this movie is the best part, and the climax with the out of the frying pan into the fire scene from the book, and Thorin and Azog and Bilbo's final battle and the eagles coming to rescue them is amazing, is awesome. It's such a thrilling way to conclude the film, and the eagles carrying our heroes over the mountains is just a breathtakingly beautiful scene. That made my jaw drop when I saw that in the cinema in 3D. And while people overlook a very great aspect about this film, how brilliantly it portrayed the friendship between Bilbo and Thorin. It is a great moment when Bilbo does save Thorin's life at the end, because before then Thorin had doubted him. So when Thorin finally accepts him into the company by saying, "I've never been so wrong about you in all my life," that just made me cry. That brought a tear to my eye. So even if it isn't as emotional as Lord of the Rings, it does have its heart, and the cliffhanger was great. Boy, it made me excited to see Desolation of Smaug when they're just standing on the rock and Bilbo says that classic line, "I do believe the worst is behind us." Well, I'm afraid not, buddy. There's way worse to come, but what an awesome final shot when we see the bird knocking on the door of Erebor and Smaug's eye opening, and that's the movie, guys. Gotta wait only 2 more years to see how this story concludes. I could not have been happier with this movie when I saw it. I do think that Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey is a grand beginning to this trilogy, and easily my favourite of the Hobbit films. Granted, it's not as good as any of the Lord of the Rings films, and it does have a slow beginning and overuse of CGI, but once it gets the character development, that's the way it does pick up the pace and become a great adventure movie. Whether the other two films in the Hobbit trilogy, whether the Hobbit needed to be a trilogy is debatable, but with this film I believe at least they tried. I give The Hobbit an unexpected journey 5 stars out of 5. Well, I love you guys, thank you for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and stay tuned for my review of The Desolation of Smaug and The Battle of the Five Armies and my Middle-earth ranking. What do you think of An Unexpected Journey? Please comment and let me know. Please like this video and subscribe. Please follow me on Twitter and on Google+, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.